on December 20th, you tweet, if you want to do your shareholders a $100 billion favor, convert Tesla balance sheet from US dollars to Bitcoin. This is a response to a meme that Elon shared. And so Elon responds instantaneously, are such large transactions even possible? And you respond, I've purchased 1.3 billion in Bitcoin in the past month. I'm happy to share my playbook with you from one rocket scientist to another. By the way, Michael has dual degree from MIT and he is a rocket scientist. And then just a month or so later, you tweet that on February 3rd and 4th, you're going to have a Bitcoin corporate conference. And it's a meeting to teach executives the benefits of Bitcoin. And 1,400 firms show up to your conference.
An amazing show.
Lunch and learn session. And then amongst the attendees are a handful of executives from SpaceX and presumably Tesla. This is on February 3rd and 4th. 4 days later, Tesla buys 1.5 billion in Bitcoin. Can you just explain how, first of all, it's kind of cool when you impact the wealthiest person on earth at that time and convince them to, think about a new investment thesis to help the stakeholders and shareholders of Tesla?
Well, I mean, if you'd asked any company in February of 2020, do you have a Bitcoin strategy? They would be like, what's Bitcoin? Why do I need it? What's the problem with my traditional treasury strategy? But I think if you look at what happened following that, all the treasury strategies just were broken. If you're buying low yielding bonds, you're getting 0% interest. The money supply is expanding. It expanded 30% last I checked, but certainly 20%. So your purchasing power is falling by 20%. So that breaks people out of their traditional patterns. So the idea behind Bitcoin, and if you reason from first principles, and Elon Musk does reason from first principles, he created PayPal, and he created a rocket company nobody thought you could create, and he created a car nobody thought you could create. Well, then you look and you say, well, look, I got $20-30 billion and it's losing 15 to 20% of its purchasing power a year. What should I do about that? The answer is pretty clear. Buy an appreciating asset. MicroStrategy went through the process of considering everything, and we finally decided Bitcoin was the strongest treasury asset that we could find. My message to him, and it would be the same message to anybody, Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon, is if you have $100 billion worth of cash or $10 billion worth of cash, it's yielding zero, losing 20% of its value a year. It's a liability. Flip it to an asset. The way you flip it to an asset is you convert it into something which is going up 200% a year. And Bitcoin's going up 200% a year for a decade, but it went up 800% last year. And if you understand Bitcoin, you think, well, it's $1 trillion asset, probably going to 100 trillion. So if I get in now and I convert my cash, which is depreciating, into something that's appreciating, you create a very positive cycle for your shareholders. And that's what I conveyed in the tweet. I mean, that's what he was doing. My only disagreement with him is I told him to buy 10 billion and then, 5 billion. If you look at what happened, if Tesla or Apple stepped up and bought 10 billion worth of Bitcoin, they would triple it, double or triple it.
Yeah.
You would, people noted Tesla made more money in 6 weeks following that decision than they made in the history of making cars.
Yeah, it was better than energy credits.
Yeah.
But the real idea is, if you're the first country to buy Bitcoin, if you're the first city, what if New York City borrows $1 billion at 3% interest and buys $1 billion worth of Bitcoin? It doubles. They've got 2 billion. Then they go back and borrow another billion. It doubles. They've got 4 billion. Then they eliminate taxes, right? Or the like. Yeah. Then what does every other city do? They all have to follow. And what you're doing is you're creating a dynamic. The more aggressive you do this, the more aggressively other people have to follow you. Then your assets are trading up. Then you're generating investment income, and you're lifting with the balance sheet as opposed to the P&L. If you look at the K-shaped recovery, the K-shaped recovery is Wall Street companies. They see their balance sheets expand by 25 to 40% doing nothing. Main Street companies have to work 25% to 40% harder to get nothing. And if your business strategy is asset poor and manufacturing rich, you're fighting against the wind. And if your business strategy is I hold $1 billion of assets and the money supply expands, you're sailing with the wind. And so that's the general thesis there.
Michael, there's 40,000 publicly traded companies, but I believe there's only 32 that have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So we're really at the beginning. I mean, and we had ARK Invest on our show, and they talked about if 1% of companies put the balance sheet on Bitcoin, it could be up as much as 50,000 price increase
in February of 2020, Bitcoin was a consumer thing. It was for crypto traders and consumers, and there were some hodler believers, but at that point, the cost of capital felt like more like 7%, and conventional treasury strategies you thought would yield 3%. And you might hold your nose and accept a minus 4% a year thing because, it'll be 20 years before it's really material. That's fine. But when the cost of capital went to 21%, the treasury yield went to 0%, and you got minus 21%, then every institutional investor says, well, maybe I need something like gold, but is this better than gold? And that's kind of what they, Paul Tudor Jones, Stanley Druckenmiller, Bill Miller. You have 1,000 companies, 1,000 big investors that all discovered digital gold. Companies like mine, when we did our search, we found that there was no public company with any material amount of Bitcoin. Wow. We were the first, but then we were followed by Square. We were followed by Marathon Digital. We were followed by Tesla, and so on and so forth. And so it's still early days. I would say that year 0 was from March to February 8th when Tesla announced. We're now year 1 of legitimate institutional adoption. And we should see the next 36 months should be kind of very fast.
Amazing.
Growth.
Yeah, no, we definitely see massive adoption. But the interesting question is, what do central banks do? Are they going to buy Bitcoin? Are they going to hold those in reserves like they heard other reserve currencies? Or is this going to be kind of a war on the dollar? Because it's starting to look like a war on central bank currencies, and will central banks participate? So what do you think?
I think that the right way to think about this is that money has 2 components. There's a currency component, which is a medium of exchange and a payment network. And then there's an asset component, which is a long-term store of value. And it used to people used the dollar as a medium of exchange, and they used debt and ETFs and index funds as store of value. Mm-hmm. And maybe some people use gold. I think that if you look out, you're going to see the final culmination of the mobile wave is 8 billion people on the planet with a mobile wallet, and one layer is US dollar or euros in your checking account or your payment network, and it moves at the speed of light on compliant payment rails. And then the second layer is your savings account, and that's like a high quality asset. So what are the high quality currencies? US dollar, euro, yen, yuan. What are the high quality assets? Bitcoin, and then fill in your blank, an ETF, your Amazon, Apple. Who are the losers? Low quality assets, probably gold is a loser. Some of the, crappy stocks are a loser. Bonds that are negative yielding, savings accounts that give you negative interest. Those are losing assets. And the losing currencies, Venezuelan currency, Nigerian currency, Argentine currency, Lebanese currency. The weak currency is getting squeezed out. Weak assets getting squeezed out. The world will stampede toward strong assets, strong currency. I think the US dollar is a winner. I don't think it's a loser. I think that this spreads American supremacy to you should expect 5 billion mobile wallets with the US dollar on it. And now how do you get the mobile wallets to synchronize in cyberspace? You need the Bitcoin blockchain, because that's the settlement network that lets a mobile app in Africa settle with a mobile app in the US and a mobile app in China once a day on the blockchain. And then you got 18 million applications or 18 million transactions an hour running on the second layer with the currency.